Welcome.
To the joy of coding.
Hello and welcome to episode 367 of The Joy of Coding. My name is Mike Conley. It's so good to have you here. I'm back. I'm back from 2 weeks off. I was traveling and wasn't able to stream, but I'm back. The last episode was on May 15th, so, that's almost 10 days and we'd be at a month. So it's like almost a month. Let's say about half a month I've been away. So it's good to be back with episode 367. Let's get to it. We're going to be live hacking on some Firefox stuff today. Why wait? Let's talk about it. Okay, so today's June 5th, 2024. It's episode 367. A reminder, no plan survives breakfast. I think I know what I'm going to be doing today. I think I know what I'm going to be focusing on, but I might be wrong. And, I'm just going to kind of deal with things as they come. None of the software that I write, any of the code I write or anything has been like pre-planned or anything. I'm going to try and tackle it as it comes and try and think out loud so you can ride along with me while we figure stuff out. And that might mean getting sidelined, distracted. That might mean we get stuck. We have to try a bunch of different things. Who knows what'll happen? But that's the name of the game. That's the first thing. The second thing is that the agenda that we're looking at is something you have access to. And you can follow along and click on handy links and stuff. Depending on where you are, it's going to be in a different place. If you're watching this on YouTube, it's down in the video description. If you're watching this on Air Mozilla, it's over there in the details, the video details. And if you're watching this on Twitch, it's down in the channel details. You'll note that unlike past streams, I didn't mention diode.zone. I'm actually going to skip down so I can mention what's going on there. So, yeah, I already mentioned I'm back. Actually, I'll put this back. I'm back. Yeah, I already mentioned that. Diode.zone. I used to restream to Diode.zone, but I'm not doing that today. And the reason for that is if you go to Diode.zone, which is, if you're not familiar with Diode.zone, it's a PeerTube instance. PeerTube is like a federated video application, video hosting application. You can think of it as almost like where Twitter is to Mastodon what YouTube is to PeerTube. Like, that's a rough analogy. So it allows people to post videos, but it also has some interesting differences from first of all, you can host your own. You can host your own PeerTube instance. You can, have your multiple channels on. You can have other people have channels on your PeerTube instance. I was using someone else's PeerTube instance, Diode.zone, which is predominantly for, I think, electronics and sort of software development. But the owner of that instance is, he's not, I don't know what they do for full time, but it's not Diode.zone. That was like a side gig, and it was like something that they had been volunteering resources to maintain and whatnot. And I didn't realize this. And so there's this big banner at the top of Diode.zone that's like, hey, we're trying to downscale this a little bit. We're trying not to have so many videos. Like, we've got something like 15 terabytes of videos. This is expensive. This is, network is expensive. Please help. Please. Well, it's not like they asked for money, even though I think there's a Patreon. Although I don't think they accept money through it anymore. I think they're just looking to downscale. Anyways, long story short, I'm not streaming this to Diode.zone. If you have a PeerTube instance, because I'd love to also have this exist, this series exist on the Fediverse somewhere via an application like PeerTube. If you have a PeerTube instance that you know of that might make sense for me to go to, and I'm happy to contribute, monetarily to support it, let me know. Let me know what instances make sense. I don't want to join an instance that is full of kind of scummy, gross stuff. Anything that's just hey, here's a bunch of programmers hanging out, and here's I don't want to go to a place where it's full of adult content or anything like that. I'd rather it be like a PeerTube instance that is mostly hey, people programming, software, that sort of thing. So if you have any recommendations, let me know. Smurf says, welcome back. Check out Odyssey.com. Is this a PeerTube instance? Odyssey.com. Ooh. I am not familiar with this. Is this PeerTube? What is this? About. FAQ. I am Lady Fungus. What? Odyssey Basics. Welcome to Odyssey. What is Odyssey? What is it? I don't really want Odyssey. Oh, it's a blockchain-based media platform. See, not the biggest fan of blockchain. So maybe there's... Oh, referring to Odyssey as blockchain-based isn't just sloganeering. It's hosted on the LBRY network, which Odyssey pulls from. For those interested in blockchain, this is really cool. For those of us who don't know anything about blockchain, that's totally fine because Odyssey requires zero blockchain knowledge to use. I'd rather not prop up blockchain stuff if I can avoid it. So if you've got other suggestions, please let me know. All right, so moving on. I want to mention something else, actually, which is something I discovered for myself, like just before the stream started, like not that long ago, maybe 15 minutes ago. So you're probably already familiar with the Gottfried Wilhelm Leibniz. This is my classic example. You're probably already familiar with the translation feature in Firefox. This is the like built-in translations, language translation, and it does it all client-side, so nothing gets sent to Mozilla or anything. Whenever you do the translation, it's all done locally on your machine, which is really cool. Well, one thing I just found out is that you can also make a selection. Like if I select some text here and right click, you can translate the selection, and then you'll get this thing to come up, and it shows you the selection translated, which I think is pretty neat. And then from here you can like copy the text or close it out or choose a different, like maybe I could choose to translate it to French. Which is kind of neat, and then I can just be done with it. I think that's neat. Cool stuff. Good job, translations team. The other thing that's neat, if you're a follower of the stream, if you've watched it before, you've probably already noticed that like we have like new, richer tooltips that I've had kind of like enabled for a while, but that now they're enabled by default. So these tooltips show you not only the tab title and the domain, but also like a thumbnail of the page, which is nice. And if you're on Nightly, it'll also show you the process IDs for the processes that are running for that particular tab, which is helpful for like Nightly software, like the software developers working on Firefox. So anyways, that's all just kind of news on cool stuff that's inside of Firefox Nightly. All right, let's get down to work. What do we want to do today? Well, I was hoping to do a Windows jump list denouement because we're almost done. Remember, I think I had mentioned during the last stream where we'd gotten all the reviews that we needed to fix the favicon thing, to get the favicon caching mechanism off of the main thread. And then there was patches to like remove the legacy backend. Well, I didn't make much progress on those after the Okra says this translation features needs to download the translation data to work. Yes, it does. So sorry, going back to translations for a second. So there's a trade-off. Excuse me. So all of the translation occurs locally, but in order to do that, Firefox needs to download quite a bit of data, basically the translation engine from Mozilla. And that translation engine is several megabytes large. I don't actually know how big they are, but you can manage this. If you go to settings, I believe there's a section in here about translations. Translations, yeah. And you can download, you can choose to like manage what engines you have downloaded. Like clearly I've downloaded a lot of them. I've got almost all of them, but looks like I'm missing Catalan and Czech. So let me get those. But you can also remove, if you need to like reclaim disk space, you can remove the engines. And I believe these engines will update over time. And, oh, this is interesting. So you can actually like, I don't know how this management works, but presumably you can, oh, if like I choose to not translate a certain page, like never translate this site, I guess I can manage that over here. Okay, well, interesting. Anyways, yeah, you have to download these translation engines to do the translation locally. But once that's done, nothing leaves your machine. So now I can probably translate this to Czech. Translate it to Czech. There, I cannot like verify. I don't read Czech, but apparently this isn't the German translation. This text translated to Czech. Maybe Maybe. I can't say for certain. I can't even say for certain whether or not this is translated properly into English, but it certainly makes sense as English. And it matches what I know about Gottfried Leibniz, who is an interesting character. All right, let's move on. So yeah, jump list stuff. So we'd gotten to the point where we had written the patch to do the favicon thing. Those were all reviewed, and then patches to remove the old backend, the legacy backend. I pushed it up to try. It came back green, so I think we're actually good to post that up for review. I'm hoping to do that today. But the favicon thing, there's like one last review comment that came in that I was hoping we could look at, and that has to do with favicon. It's so this one was accepted. There's a comment here from Pearsons about how we could split out. There's like a conversation in here about splitting out a lambda from this large function here, because this is it's not a huge function, but it's got some nested lambdas, and Pearsons had suggested in like an earlier patch, like, hey, you could split that out into a separate method. And I was like, oh, I can't figure out how to do that. And he said, oh, well, are you looking for this version of, this ends up being a lot harder to do because such and such is a stack method. The invoke async method you suggested that I use accepts me and pass of this type when I try to forward a separate method. That works for instance methods, but not for stack methods, so I think we'll stick with my nested lambdas for now. And he says, are you looking for the lambda function version? And then he pointed me at this. So presumably I can actually do that split out, and I was hoping we could try that today. And if that works, then I've got all the reviews I need. I can probably queue this for landing, and I'll go ahead and try and do that today. All right. Let's try it. So over here, I got my Windows machine. It rebooted while I was traveling, so I've got to reopen everything up here. WinUtils. I think we're looking at the right place here, which was, it's kind of hard to read because of all this gunk. But basically, he was saying that I could split out. Split out like this lambda right here, so that we don't have a lambda nested within yet another lambda. So let's try and do that. So he says that I can use this form of invoke async, which takes an event target, a static string, and then the function, a function pointer. Invoke a function object asynchronously, return a promise that the function should eventually resolve or reject. Okay, let's try it. So what we need is a function that accepts these same arguments that are being captured in this lambda. So let's create a static method, another one. Static. Sure, auto favicon. What is this doing? Obtain call to promise cache. What is this going to do? We get the current thread that will call. Right. So this method actually does the work of sending the lambda to run a function back on the main thread. Obtain. So what would be a good name for this method? So this one was called obtain cached favicon async. You could, the cheap and easy way is you call it like obtain cached favicon async helper. And that's maybe not a bad idea. And it's going to take a Boolean a use shortcut cache dir a URI, NSI URI, a page URI, an ICO file, NSI file, a ICO file, and a thread. And I think it's just like, oh, sorry, ref pointer, not raw pointers. And then the thread is serial event target. So ref pointer, NSI URI. Or really, these should be like ns_com pointer maybe. Because I think they're com pointers coming through, right? Com pointer here, com pointer for the file, yeah. ns_com pointer, ICO file. And then what was the last part? It was the thread. So that's a ref pointer to NSI serial event target. A thread. Don't worry about the formatting, we'll deal with it later. And then this is all the stuff that happened inside of the helper. Now this thing should ensure that it's running on the main thread, so let's do that. Assert. Is there, there's like a main thread assertion, a classic one. It's like moz assert is main thread, but I can't remember what it is. Moz assert main thread. NS is main thread, yeah. It creates a holder, and then a promise, and then calls that, and then it returns the promise. And now, can I, instead of doing this, I'm going to keep it just because I'm paranoid that this isn't going to work. So I'll just do that for now. Can I do this? Return, invoke, async. And then what's the format? What's the signature? Target. Caller name function. Okay. Target. Target. Caller name. I think that's this. And then the function. Can I just do like favicon helper obtain cached icon file async helper? Can I just do that? And I don't have high hopes, but let's see what happens. Don't worry about the formatting. The linter will take care of it. It's gross, the current formatting. One of the things I like about working in JavaScript lately with VS Code is that when I hit save, it like automatically prettiers it for me, which is very nice. And I think, it's been a while since I've thought about this, but I think, did we add some tests for this so that I can make sure that this is still working? Yeah, we added some tests. So we can run those tests and make sure we got it right. If this builds. It doesn't build. No member named such and such because I didn't declare it properly. Static can only be specified inside the class definition. Okay. Fine. So maybe I need to declare this over here. Static auto What do you think of that? Danny Cullen says there isn't a plugin in Sublime for that. Probably, but I don't know if like that's for JavaScript. For C++, we use like the Clang plugin for formatting, and I don't know if that works as quickly. Oh, geez. Because I changed the header, I've got to go and rebuild all these things. That's fun. Well, while we're waiting on this to see if it worked, maybe we can review a patch. Let's do some work in parallel. So I'm gonna go back over here. I'm gonna open up my review queue off screen and find a patch to review. Okay, so I have a couple to review. I'm just gonna queue them up here. So I have a colleague, Shane, who is cleaning up a bunch of stuff. He's basically carrying the torch on some work I was doing late last year, which was to split up AS Router, which is kind of a complicated piece of machinery for showing onboarding messages to people from the new tab code base, where it was originally born out from, but now it is involved like more. It does more than just show things on the new tab page, and so. Oh, hey, we finished building widgets, so maybe this is gonna work. We'll see at the linking time. No. Oh, whoops, whoopsie daisy. I forgot to update all of my arguments. So page URI, ICO file. IO thread. I also forgot to move everything. Shortcut cacher. How do the arguments get moved over? I just realized. Where are the arguments? Arguments. Function, make ref pointer. Function async function. That might be sort of taken care of here. It'd be great if I could find more examples of this particular form of invoke async. Lambda. Wish I could get more context. Lambda. Lambda. More lambdas. So here's one, kind of. Async. The thread. Which one is this? The this val. Yeah. Lambda. The this val. Like, what is this? It doesn't take any arguments. Be really nice if there was one that... Oh, here we go. And then arguments. Invoke async. Oh, this. Then func. Then this. Then arguments. See, that's no good. I need just like the bare... Lambda. Like, what happens if I just pass in the arguments here? Like, I have a feeling it won't match. Like, there's some templating magic happening here. I don't know if you can tell, but there's like this template function magic is here. And it's possible that like the way you can use arguments is included as part of this magic, but I can't actually tell. Function object must return a ref pointer Moz promise. And then forward the function. No idea. Proxy runnable. Chain 2. Function. Yeah, look. Look, the function never takes any arguments. I think I'm going to push back. I don't think this works. Yes, but yes, that looks closer. But as far as I can tell, it doesn't allow me to pass arguments to the static method. Okay, so I'm just gonna put this to bed. If it turns out we want to actually, there should be a template version with ... in the template arguments, which should allow passing arguments. Where are you seeing that? So here are all the invoke asyncs. Here's the one that uses the this type. No good. This is the one that also requires this type. No good. This one also requires this type. No good. Type name. Where are you seeing this? Tell me more. This one? Type name? Please tell me more, Ocris. I'm not entirely certain what you're saying. But because part of the issue that we were dealing with is because there is no this. We're inside of static methods. There is no this. And so I don't know what to pass. I can't just pass null pointer for the this type. What arguments do I want to pass? All of these. But we're inside of static methods. There's no notion of this. And I think that's where we're falling over. So I'm just gonna skip this part, and I'm just gonna land these. I hope they rebase cleanly. We're about to find out. Let's go ahead and trigger the landing. That was a little can't you use lambda then? That's what I am using. I am using a lambda. Originally we were using a lambda. So to be clear, what I was replacing was a lambda. And the only reason I was trying to use this other method was because Pearson suggested it as a way of not having a nested lambda within a lambda. I don't know. If there's something I'm missing, Ocris, I'm gonna wait until here. I'm gonna hide the done inline so we can look at this more cleanly. But cached icon file async. So let me see if I can show you what I'm talking about. So in this method, this is the method. This runs this outer scope main thread. Invoke async, lambda, not main thread. Now we're inside worker thread or IO thread. Great. Now we need to do work back on the main thread. So we were nesting another lambda that dispatches this lambda to the main thread. And Pearson's was like, hey, why don't you pull that the innermost lambda out into a helper method and then use this form of invoke async, because that one doesn't require this. Unfortunately, while it doesn't require this, it also doesn't let me pass arguments. And I need to pass arguments from this scope to this scope. So that's what's up. I'm going to just check to see if I missed anything, Okris. If there's anything I've missed, please let me know. Okay. Cool. So yes, let's go ahead and land these patches. Woo! We'll see if they land cleanly. It's been 2 weeks or so since they were written, so we'll see. Missing a test policy tag. I need to add those. So I'm going to say change project tags, testing, exception, other. Testing the actual Windows jump list mechanism is fairly difficult because mechanism end to end is fairly difficult because part of it is controlled by the OS. We do have unit tests by Windows OS. We do have unit tests, however, for the jump list builder. In the future, we may also stub out jump list builder, mock out jump list builder, mock out the jump list builder to write unit tests for Windows jump lists.sys.mjs, but not today. Okay. And the other one, add an async version. Yeah, this one does have tests. So change project tags, testing. It's actually testing elsewhere. The tests for these changes are in, what was the name of this revision? Such and such. Done. Okay, reload. Who needs tests? Anonymous C developer. Danny Colin. Oh, who needs tests? Everyone needs tests. All right, let's go ahead and see what happens. Putting the spaghetti in the machine, y'all. Bum 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 bum. I might get backed out. We'll see. It might tell me that it won't apply cleanly. That could happen. Is Autoland open right now? No, Autoland is currently closed, waiting for coverage. So when it opens, we'll see what happens. All right, so that's jump list stuff. I think we can also post the removal patches for review. So let's do that. Let's revert these changes. Actually, you know what I'll do? I'm going to pull central and rebase, actually. We're actually going to see if the rebase will occur cleanly. And if not, then we can cancel the auto land. Wow, it's been a while since I pulled. Come on now. Good eye, mate. 10 seconds. Anyone here from France? I was just in France. What a lovely country. Your food is very good. Can you link to the bug report with the invoke async suggestion? I don't see it in the agenda. Sure, I can link to the Fabricator comment. Let's see here. The comments are static. It's this one. So Windows jump list, jump list denouement. I'll add our Pearson's suggestion for using invoke async. Okay, so if you reload the agenda, that should work. Okay, this rebase underway. So yeah, I was just in France. What a delightful country. You've got great food. Your transit system seems to be really, really nice. Like I was able to get basically everywhere we needed to be just by like train, which was very efficient, very, very fast, very efficient, at least from my perspective. I traveled great distances. When they aren't on strike. Yeah, that is true. I've heard that can occur. And, you know, it happens. But, yeah, the transit system was really smooth for me. Luckily, they weren't on strike when I was there. So the rebase occurred smoothly. That's good. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to rebase the legacy removal stuff. Where is all that? Remove. You know what? I think I seem to recall this. I think I didn't actually do that work on my Windows machine. I did it on my Mac OS machine. So let me find it. Just give me a sec. Let me find the Fabricator revision. Got it. It's this one. So we're going to pull these ones in. Let's pull in all the children chain sets too. So I should be rebased on top of that, and we're going to go mozfab patch, boom, apply to here. Now this, I don't know if this is going to apply cleanly. It might. Oh, the other place I was in, Belgium. The chocolate and waffle game in Belgium. Woo! They know what they're doing when it comes to chocolate and waffles. You know, if the rumors are true, if you've never been and you like waffles or chocolate, you could go to worse places than Belgium, or at least where I was in Belgium. I really enjoyed where we were at in Belgium. There's a city called Ghent. We didn't go to Bruges, or Brugge. I heard that's actually how you pronounce it. But Anglophones pronounce it Bruges. And yeah, I really enjoyed Ghent. Okay, so that applied cleanly as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to... Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to cancel the auto land request here. Okay, and then I'm going to, so luckily the tree was closed, and then I'm going to Moz Fab submit. Right here, what I'm going to do is, yeah, Moz Fab submit rebase and no whip. And then I'll do a MozFab reorg. No, as work in progress. No, I said no whip. As 5 patches as work in progress. Alright, I'm canceling out of that. I need to have those be not work in progress. So I'm going to do a hist edit. We're going to get rid of the whip. Check out the whip. You get rid of the whip. You went there for work or for vacation? I went there for vacation. I was working the first week. So this is what I did. One of the nice things about working remotely is that every now and then you get to work remotely. And so during the first week of travels, I was working, but that was intentional so that we could take the opportunity to explore in the morning. I was working Eastern hours while I was over in France. And so I worked from like 3 p.m. until like, I guess 10 or 11 p.m. at night, which is a long day, except that our bodies were still on Eastern time, so it was fine. But we tried to get up really early in France so that we could take the opportunity to like explore the area that we were in, which is a really nice area. And then our workday started. So it was almost like we were half on vacation, and then we would like work from 3 p.m. until nighttime, and then we would go to bed. Like immediately we would fall asleep. And so the advantage of doing that is that by the time our work week was done and we were actually on vacation, we were more or less adjusted to the time zone, which was very nice. Because one of the things I don't like about traveling so far is like the first week or so, I'm just ruined time zone wise. Like I'm just jet lagged, so I'm napping in the middle of the day when I'd rather be out exploring. So this way, I was able to get all of that jet lag kind of out of the way at the beginning. It didn't really have to affect us when we were on vacation. I'm still dealing with it now coming back home though, so like I'm gonna crash probably right after work. Or we'll see. We'll see. Okay, so I think that's done. Let's try that submit again. MozFab submit, rebase, no whip. Maybe I'll just not include that whatsoever. Or hang on, what? Submit, rebase. Don't mark review list. Commits with descriptions that start with whip will continue to be flagged as work in progress. Okay. So I'm just going to say submit rebase. Go, go, go. So yeah, will be changed to request review. That's very nice. What's going on here? This is just gonna take a while. So while we're waiting for this, maybe we can do some reviews. So like I said, my colleague Shane has been working on helping to split off NewTab and AS Router even further. There's a whole stack of patches that do this. I reviewed one of them already. I reviewed this one. I'm gonna review some of these other ones. So move remote text component to AS Router. So trying to refresh my memory. So the remote text component, it's called remote text as a custom element, but the class is called like Moz text paragraph. So it looks like that's the first thing that is being fixed here, is that the file is being renamed and the class is being renamed. Let's just make sure that there's nothing else in here that needs to be updated. Yeah, it's a fairly simple. I don't know what this thing does, but it's an HTML element that lets you use some Fluent variables and then uses remote L10N. I see. Remote L10N. Remote localization. I understand. Okay. And that is getting moved over into AS Routers packaging. That's fine. And then, yeah, CFR page actions, load the subscript. Components remote text. Yeah, that looks good. Yes, very nice. No longer bound to activity stream. Yeah, and then the test is being moved from NewTab to here. That's great. And then that's the only custom element, I think, under custom elements. It's just the one, so we can stop packaging that. That's great. Yeah, really happy with this. Woo! Great. Thanks. That makes a lot of sense. How's our rebase or our submission going? Still going. Okay, next one. Define the onboarding provider pref outside of NewTab. The onboarding provider pref. Providers onboarding. Onboarding provider. AS Router provider configuration. So the NewTab page. Oh, this I don't fully understand. So activity stream has this thing. This is like a mapping of, I think, prefs, and then it like automatically translates them to objects. I don't fully understand this. Other ASR reference, they must be defined there to enable rollouts. Oh, I see. It's being, okay, instead of encoding it here, it's being encoded here. So let's see if what we have is a match. ID, onboarding, yes. Type, local, yes. Local provider, onboarding message provider, yes. Enabled true, yes. Exclude, empty array, beautiful. Yep, that makes sense to me. Makes sense. This one has already been reviewed by someone else, but I will take a look at it as well. Okay, hang on. I'm going to put a pause on that for a second because these have been posted up for review. And now I can do MozFab reorg. Is there a reorg necessary here? It's non-linear, multiple heads. Uh-oh. Let's see what our story is here. Remove. So I need to make the parent revision this one. Add tests. Okay, now we can try and actually remove or land these 3. So let's reorg is new for MOSFAB. It's been around for a little while and it doesn't always work. But if you ever change the order of patches, it can help communicate to Fabricator how you want things arranged. But it doesn't always work nicely. Oh, I've already got a review here. That's nice. Okay, so let's go ahead and just try and auto land these first 3 again. And we'll go back to our reviewing. So what's happening? Part 4, remove unused AS router button import. So it wasn't using it. So it was importing this button. So this is some button stuff that's not used. This is the Mac equivalent. Oh, I think these are these generated? They're not generated. It's just unused altogether. I'm gonna go ahead. I don't think I need to review that. This has already been reviewed by other new tab people, so I don't need to review that. So I'm gonna review this stuff instead. Define the onboarding pref outside. Oh, this one I already did. So then it's just this last one. Remove miscellaneous unused AS router code from new tab. That sounds great. So AS router preferences, ASLint rollouts. I don't know what that means. I don't think front-end code style reviewers. This is something that Mark just looked at, so I don't need to review this. For new tab, we don't. What is being removed? We don't need these fake outs anymore. These fake objects. That's good. We don't need to alias AS router anymore. That's good. And then we don't need to check. I guess all of these, the karma rule doesn't apply anymore because content source AS router presumably will have gone away. Onboarding. Are these still around? Where are these? Yeah, they don't exist anymore. They've been moved over to AS router. So yeah, we can get rid of that. And content source AS router. New tab. Content source. There is no AS router. So yeah, we can remove that. That's all good. I like it. I like it. Thank you for the cleanups. I like it. And that's it for my reviews for this particular project, the cleanups. But I'm glad to see Shane pick up the torch, continuing to clean up and separate AS router from new tab. I think that's just good for everybody. All right, where are we? This stuff is queued for landing. Right? Landing's queued. Autoland's still closed. All right. Let's do something else. So I've done some reviews. Let's talk about backup. This is something I've been working on with a couple of other people. Maybe you've heard me mention it. You may have seen updates about it in like the nightly blog. So if you go to the nightly blog, periodically you'll see like these weeks in Firefox issues, and like you'll see under migration improvements, this is where this work is kind of documented. You know, we've got some of it already landed in the source code tree. It's not doing anything yet, but a bunch of stuff has been landed to enable us to do some interesting things. So what is it? What are we talking about? Okay. We want to make it possible for your Firefox to back up your profile state to a local file on the file system. And you can turn it on and it will put it somewhere. And it's a like compressed archive of your profile at a particular moment in time. And we're hoping to do that in the background. Like you don't have to like, hey, create a snapshot for me. Hey, create a snapshot for me. Like it'll do it, like maybe once every hour. It's not super expensive. At least we need to test it on more hardware. We haven't turned it on yet. We haven't reached the point yet where the whole thing works yet. But we've got the point where we've gotten to the point where we can copy all of the data. And let's see. How it works is, I mean, when you're for people who have done this kind of thing before, what they normally do is they shut Firefox down and copy their profile folder to another machine or something. And that might work to some degree, but there are every now and then some things that, like some post-processing that you need to do that, if you don't do it, can put you in a kind of a broken state. For example, custom search engine configuration will not survive just a copy of the profile folder from one to the other, and that's because of some security mechanism. I can't remember exactly how it works, but it's to prevent malware from hijacking your search engines. And so there's some post-processing that needs to be done. And this is all to try and make it easier for you to have a backup, but also to move your stuff between machines. In the event that you need to migrate to a new computer, you can take your backup, move it to another machine, and restore from it. Now, one of the things that we need to do with this backup is we don't want to put anything really, really sensitive in there unless it's been encrypted. Because we want people to feel relatively safe, like sending it, I don't know, you could put it into an email attachment or something. Or you could upload it to a server and then put it in Dropbox or put it on Google Drive or something. You probably wouldn't want to put your passwords database up on Dropbox. Maybe you would, maybe you wouldn't. But we're hoping to do client-side encryption, so we can encrypt the backup into like this big old ball, and then you can upload it somewhere or send it to yourself, and then whenever you want to recover from that backup on the same machine or from a different machine, you can decrypt it and then recover from the backup. Akra says, will Firefox detect that I copy the profile and do post-processing automatically or ask for it? So if you're doing the thing that I mentioned, which is like you copied the folder to a new machine, no. Like in order to do this mechanism, in order to use this mechanism, you're going to want to use the backup thing that we're using, not just like copying folders around. Let me actually show you what we've got so far. This may or may not interest you, but let me show you what we've got so far. I think I've got a local build ready to go. I think this is, yeah, it's done. So we've got a little bit of UI already built out, but it's not wired up to anything. I'll show you that first. And then I'll show you the sort of the debug UI that we do have. So right now this isn't even alpha software yet. This is stuff that is pre-released. We haven't thrown QA at it. Do not use this. Do not do anything with this, like create a backup and hope that it's going to work in the future. Like all of this is subject to change. None of this is ready to go yet. So just keep in mind, all right? This is very, very early days. But if you turn this on, this UI on, like we've got a little bit of fiddly UI here to like turn on backup. And I moved a profile from Windows to Linux, and so far it worked perfectly, so I was wondering if this feature will do something to that profile. It will not. And you might be fine, Ocris. You moved it from Windows to Linux, and if you didn't have a custom search provider or a custom search engine setup, then you're probably okay. But in certain situations, with certain user configurations, hard-coded paths are used to do certain things. I don't really have much of the detail here, but you can have a functional Firefox after you've done the move, but certain things may not work as you expect. And so we're trying to like make it easier so that users, we don't want to have your everyday average user. Like Ocris, you're probably fine going into like your file system and moving folders around, but just finding the profile folder for your average user is asking kind of a lot. You know, like getting a user to go to About Support and saying like, okay, now show Finder, and then find the folder, and now make sure Firefox isn't running, and then copy the folder. Yes, it's it's hundreds of megabytes. Move it over there. Like this is, and then like to restore it, you have to like create a profile in the new machine, copy the contents of the old profile into that. It's like, it's a mess. It's a mess. It's really, really hard. And we're trying to make that a lot easier. And so, yeah, like this is some of the UI. It doesn't do anything just yet, but this is some of the UI. And here's the debug UI. And this actually does some stuff. If you go to browser, content, backup, debug.html. So reminder, this is not production ready. Do not use this stuff for anything. But I'm going to create a backup. Now, what's interesting about this is that it can occur at runtime. So it can happen in the background. Now, whenever you're, if you're like copying folders, you don't want to do that while Firefox is still running, because sometimes Firefox reads files off of the disk and then reads them into memory and then removes the file. Like your sessions, for example, your current session is not always on disk. It's usually in memory. It's only written to disk on shutdown or, you know, periodically as a, like, a snapshot might be written out that's several minutes old as a backup in the event that you crash or something. But your most recent session, for example, and that's all your tabs and windows, is not on disk at all times. So just like copying the folder at runtime doesn't work. And that's where the backup feature that we're working on kind of excels, because it knows that, and it can flush the session to disk and then make the copy. It can flush everything that's in memory that you'd want to be in your backup to disk, into the archive. And that includes SQLite databases. So one of the things that you shouldn't do is, if you're attached to an SQLite database, is to copy it. That's what I learned. You don't want to do that. Even though SQLite databases are like really, really resilient, they are not designed to kind of survive that kind of manipulation. It might work, but the database that is copied may or may not be corrupt after you've pasted it. And so what you want to do when you're copying an SQLite database is to use something completely like a built-in mechanism of the SQLite database called the Online Backup API. This is something that I found very interesting in that SQLite supports doing like runtime copying of databases while you have open connections to them. It's very interesting. And it makes sure that whenever the backup is completed, that both databases are, at least at the point of completion, they are consistent with one another. They're copies of one another. And the way it does that is, like, and that can occur even if clients are like writing to the database. It might slow the backup down. Like it might roll back part of the copy and then have to do more of the copying. Like it might take more time if like a bunch of stuff is writing to the database while you're doing the backup, but it'll eventually occur. And so let's the Firefox, we don't have a name for it yet. We're just called the Profile Backup Tool. It takes advantage of that and the advantage of the fact that some things are written to disk, flushed to disk atomically, like JSON, certain JSON files, and that we can just copy those files. That's fine. So let's create a backup right now. Done. Created it in about 3 seconds. And if I go here, you can see a zip was created. In this case, it's only 70 kilobytes My personal profile, actually, if I can do it on my developer profile, it'll be quite a bit larger, the backup. Let's create a backup. Eight seconds. And this one's 86 megabytes. That's and from our telemetry, we've been landing some telemetry to get a sense of how big people's profile directories are and how much disk space they've got. Because when we create these backups, we don't want to like fill people's hard drives. My developer profile is like, I've been using it for a long time, and this is probably fairly typical. Tens or the low hundreds of megabytes, and then after compression, yeah, about tens or low hundreds of megabytes. And this zip file, I could move this to another machine, and then I could recover. I could unzip it, and then I could recover from that staging folder and relaunch. So that actually works right now. Now, the part that I'm currently working on is the encryption bit. Just today, I landed patches to add the encryption configuration, the local encryption configuration. And now I'm working on the actual encryption of the backup. And now, this is not a thing that I myself am an expert in, is like cryptography, but we at Mozilla have like world-class experts in this particular problem space, and they have helped me design, they've helped my team rather, design an encryption scheme for these backups. And what's nice about it is that Firefox can create these backups, but without your key, unless you unless you provide the recovery code, the passphrase or whatnot, like malware on the machine, for example, couldn't just find this file somewhere and read the contents out of it. It'd be encrypted. So that's the hope. Even Firefox, like, I'm pretty sure the way the scheme works is Firefox itself, unless you provide it the recovery code, is not going to be able to like reach into these things, even though it has access to all of the data anyways. To be clear, the encryption isn't to protect the backup from the machine, because presumably all of the data that was backed up is already on the machine. So the threat model isn't like we're trying to keep it safe from the malware on the machine. What we're trying to keep the backup safe from is attackers, while it's that file is traveling through untrusted channels. Like if you post it to Google Drive, or if you email it to someone, or if you upload it to a server somewhere, or I don't know, use some file transfer mechanism. We want to make sure that thing is, if it contains sensitive information like passwords or cookies or payment methods or anything like that, that is as safe as we can make it. And at the same time, we want to make sure that you can open it. So that involves having a strong passphrase. So that's the idea. Does it use AES? Yes, it does use AES, but it's more than just that. Like I don't have the document. We'll eventually have the documentation for the encryption posted on source docs. Like right now, the whole mechanism, the source code is documented. You can find the backup mechanism is documented here. So you can read about how the service works, but it's like source code documentation. The encryption scheme isn't yet documented, but this document will eventually describe in minute detail the scheme that we use to encrypt and decrypt backups. So we haven't gotten to that part yet, but we will soon. And yeah, there is an AES JCM key that's used to authenticate the owner of the backup, as well as being able to encrypt the backup using, how does it work? A key derived from a public key, an RSA key. It's very Byzantine, but the security engineers at Mozilla, the cryptography engineers, promised me that it has some very strong security characteristics. It's not zip encryption, no. What we do is we will compact the the profile, what we call a snapshot or a state of your profile folder. We'll copy all those things, then we'll zip it up and compress them, and then we will compress the zip file. Oh, sorry, not compress the zip file. We will encrypt the zip file, and then create a single file archive that you can move between machines. That's the idea. Woo! So again, I'm giving you like a sneak peek here. None of this is ready to use. Like I showed you like the debug interface. Don't use it yet. Do not use it. You can follow along if you care. There's a Bugzilla, a metabug for a profile backup. There's the metabug here if you want to follow along. And it's broken down into like a bunch of other metabugs, but you can follow along in here. And you can kind of see us work. It's not just me. I'm working with some other people as well and some designers. And to be determined when this thing will be ready. Like there's more parts to it. Like we want people to be able to do this thing, but we also want to encourage people to use sync as well as like yet another way of having your stuff backed up. So, this file backup is an option for people who maybe don't want to have an account, but we also want to encourage people to create an account. So we want to give people options. So at the very least, you can like have a local file system copy. Anyways, so there's more to come. And who knows, maybe I'll work on some more of this during the stream. But I thought maybe we could attack some of the cryptography stuff. I'm currently working on some tests right now for the cryptography. And I thought maybe we could flesh out some more of those tests. So let's do that. The source code is under browser components backup, and there's already a lot of tests. We've been doing a pretty good job of making sure our stuff is well tested. And let's see here. What did I want to do? This is the stuff that's in my work in progress patch. That's why it says to do. Let's see. What did I want to do first? Tests. I want to write tests. So that's backup, service encryptor. So I wrote these tests yesterday. This test here. Let's see what it does, and then we'll add to it. Jonathan Lindsay says, SQLite is resilient for such events. The data that's being written might get lost, but data already in the database should be untouched. Jonathan Lindsay says, what happens if you're writing to an SQLite database and the computer blue screens or is there a sudden power failure? Right, so SQLite does what's called write-ahead logging, like journaling. It's very resilient to crashes. And yeah, as Akra says, the data that was being written may be lost, but the database should still be in a workable state. Like the SQLite people have done a really good job of making a pretty rock solid database. And I don't exactly know how they test that scenario, but they do test the sort of like the sudden drop, the sudden shutdown, unexpected crashes. They test that, and it's quite resilient. There's a reason why SQLite is like kind of the industry standard for a local SQLite database. Like it's just what people use because it's solid. It's a solid piece of software. Okay, so this test tests that we can construct an archive encryptor by way of the properties of an archive encryption state. Akra says, as far as I know, they maintain 100% code coverage by tests. Yes, that sounds laudable, but I don't want anyone to get the false impression that 100% code coverage is something to chase, or that it means that like your code is perfectly tested. 100% code coverage does not mean that your code is like bug free or anything. It just means that every single line of code was involved during testing. And sometimes to get people who chase 100% code coverage, you end up getting really brittle tests. And so I just want to advise people out there who like look at code coverage as like the thing to chase. It's not a thing to chase. It's not a thing you should chase. Code coverage is an interesting smell if you realize that like, oh, I've only got 12% code coverage here. You should probably write more tests. But if something has like 80 to 90% coverage, that's pretty good. And you shouldn't necessarily spend a lot of effort trying to get that last 10%. You should look to see what the last 10% is. You should find out what's not been tested, because that there might be stuff that you do want to test, but just trying to hit 100% for 100%'s sake is usually not worth it in my experience. And it's not necessarily meaningful. It doesn't mean that you considered all of the cases. It doesn't mean that the code is bug-free. Okay, test archive encryption state enable. That's not what this is doing. This is not the right name. Archive encryptor constructor. Initializer, rather. Was successfully constructed. I'm doing something kind of interesting here. So we want to make sure that this thing can only be constructed if internally the state is acceptable. And sometimes that can only be validated asynchronously. But constructors of classes are not asynchronous. They are synchronous functions. And so the pattern that we've been using for this sort of thing is to have a static method, a static initializer method, and kind of a hack here. This is a hack, but this hack is actually documented in MDN as how to simulate private constructors. Because normally what you do is you'd have like your initial async initializer method use your static async initializer method will have access to the private constructor. And then so it can construct things, and you can do your async stuff in here. But there's no such thing as a private constructor in JavaScript. So you can kind of simulate it in a kind of a gross way by having a static private Boolean that only gets set to true inside of your initializer method, your static async initializer method, and then you have your constructor check that static property, and if it's not been set, then to like throw an exception. It's pretty gross, but this seems to be how you do it. This is how you do private methods in JavaScript right now. Maybe someday, test to encrypt decrypt with a mismatched public key to the private key. Test to encrypt decrypt with a mismatched public key to the private key. Oh, you mean to make sure that like someone with a different key is not able to decrypt things? Yeah, we could. Let's see if we can test that. Let's go back to our test for a second. Well, let's keep walking through this. Test that we can encrypt a single block of bytes. That was the next thing. So it was test archive encryptor single block. And in order to test that we're actually encrypting, we decrypt afterwards. Like we encrypt, we make sure that the bytes that come out are not the same as the bytes that went in, and then we test that we can decrypt the bytes that came out and that they turn back into the bytes that initially went in. Let's see how this works. So we initialize our archive encryption state with our test recovery code. We initialize an encryptor. We come up with some fake data. Right now I'm just doing something really silly. I don't know why I call it fib. I think I should call it like, I think it's because I used to generate the Fibonacci sequence as just like deterministic fake data. But I'm going to call it gen. So we create a bunch of fake bytes, and then what do we do? And then we encrypt the bytes. The second argument is like whether or not is last block. Because we want to be able to do this, the way the encryption scheme works is it works in blocks. You don't want to read the entire like 86 megabytes zip file into memory and then encrypt the whole thing, because like you don't want to suddenly just in the background suddenly consume a bunch of memory. So we're doing it in blocks where we're going to read in like about a megabyte, encrypt that block, read in another megabyte, and then flush to disk. So you trade a little bit of time for memory. That's how this works. So And the encrypted bytes will be slightly bigger than the bytes that we put in. That's because of something called the tag length. The tag that goes on the end is 128 bytes. We don't really want to be testing the Web Crypto API here, but we want to be sure that we used it correctly. We iterate both sets of bytes and ensure that we hit some difference between the two as our smoke test. So this is, I do this twice, and I think I'm going to actually split this out into a helper method. It's basically just like hey, take two uint8 arrays and test to see if they're the same or test that they're different. So I'm going to add a helper method here. Function test arrays are similar. Assert arrays are similar. Array A, array B, expect similar. Now, normally you do like, you could do a deep equal, or like that's one way of doing it. But the problem with deep equal is that deep equal will log, assert.deep equal will log the entire contents of what was just equivalent, like checked with one another. And that results in a ton of console spam. Like, and like the test will take forever because the terminal is taking a long time printing out all the stuff that it just compared. So, like, I don't think there's a way of bypassing that. Assert deep equal. But let's just double check before I do this. Yeah. Throws, rejects, greater, equal, less than, string matches. Yeah, okay, so I'm just gonna do a very simple if array array b dot assert uint8 arrays are similar. Uint8 array A, uint8 array B. If uint8 array A dot byte length is not equal to uint8 array B dot byte length, or how about this? Assert equal byte length, expect similar. That seems a little too smart. I'm going to opt for readability. Expect similar, assert that they are equal. Uint8 arrays have the same byte length. Okay. Else assert not equal have differing byte length. And then if they don't have the same byte length, let length to check equal, we'll say length to check equals uint8 array A dot byte length, and then otherwise we'll choose the minimum of the two, math.min length to check equals min. This is in the event that there just happens to be a tag of bytes, but the first block of bytes are the same, which seems really unlikely, but I want to test that as well. Byte length uint8 array b dot byte length. Okay, for let I equals 0, I is less than length to check, plus I, then let found difference equals false. If uint8 array ai is not equal to uint8 array bi, found difference equals true, break. So found difference if expect similar, assert okay, not found difference. Arrays contain the same bytes, else assert okay, found difference. Arrays contain different bytes. Now, it's not testing that, like, ooh, they are like, it's not testing that, like, oh, wow, it's cryptographically different. Like, it just makes sure that they're different enough. Like, we just make sure that the bytes are different. We're not testing the Web Crypto API. Okay. So now we can use, what's it complaining about here? uint8 array. Oh, now I think we can replace to do document boolean no, something like that. Like, I'll fill that out later. Found difference. So we're going to do this. Assert are similar. Are similar is also not assert raise similarity. That's what I'll do. Similarity. Encrypted bytes, fake bytes, false, expect similar. And then decrypted bytes, assert decrypted bytes, fake bytes, expect similar. All right, let's see if this test still works. Archive encryptor. All right, it likes it. Let's now try. So you wanted to try one with a mismatched public key. So like we're gonna try a different, a wrong passphrase. So assert wrong recovery code is the parlance. Tests that we cannot decrypt with the wrong recovery code. This is going to get fairly repetitive. Fake bytes. So I'm going to just generate this the first time. Let fake bytes equals null, and then that. Then we're going to encrypt. And confirm, and then we construct a decryptor. And then we're going to use wrong recovery code. I think this is going to throw. I think as soon as we attempt to initialize it, it's going to throw. And it won't let us do a decryption. So let's test this. Like, it just won't let us do it. I think this will be assert throws. And I can't remember what it'll say. It'll be something like probably unauthenticated. Block is not a function at 484. 484. What? Assert. Oh, sorry, rejects. Assert rejects. And why are you complaining? Assert rejects needs to be wait, thank you. Yeah, good. So this rejected. We couldn't even initialize a decryptor because the recovery code failed. So we couldn't decrypt. There's nothing that would allow us to decrypt. The mechanism won't let us do it. We don't actually care about the encrypted bytes. Since we're just testing that archive decryptor won't accept an incorrect recovery code. And this one's more like, you know what? I'm going to call this archive cryptography. Because I'm thinking of moving these out of like, or maybe archive encryption. That's what I should call them. Archive encryption. Right now, both of the classes exist within archive utils. I'm going to move them over to their own module. And I'll call it archive encryption. That's probably easier. Archive encryptor initializer. We'll need one for to do test the archive decryptor initializer. Test that we cannot decrypt from the wrong recovery code. What was the other one? Mismatched public key, private key, faulty recovery code. Yeah, it won't let us do it. Mismatched keys. I'm not sure how we test that. Like, the mechanism will not allow us to supply a different, like, the archive decryptor will not construct without the right recovery code. So I'm not sure how we test that. Let's see here. But do you supply the key pair? like the archive encryptor does. The archive encryptor does here. Let's see, it's very Byzantine. The archive encryptor will take the... so when you enable encryption, you supply a recovery code, or one is generated for you. We'll key stretch it. We'll generate a random key pair. We will stretch your recovery code with some PBKDF2, I believe. We'll generate a salt. Yeah, here's the stretching. The stretching happens here. We'll do 600,000 iterations of PBKDF2. From the key material, we derive keys from that allow you to authenticate the backup and authenticate the metadata. But the actual encryption key for the backup is generated at backup creation time. So every backup will have a unique encryption key. And then the encryption key is stored with the backup. And that key is encrypted with... Oh, geez, how does it work? It's so Byzantine, but like the security team makes it very clear that this is the best way of doing it. When we encrypt using the archive encryption key. The archive encryption key is derived from the archive key using the backup auth key as the salt. The archive key is a randomly generated HKDF key. Basically, all of this it's all created automatically. This is the sort of stuff that our security and cryptography engineers are going to review. Like, I've written it, they're going to review it and make sure I did this right. Also, I just realized I'm way over time. So you got a little sneak peek into the stuff I'm doing, and maybe we'll continue with it next week. We'll see. Let me know if you have any questions about anything I did today or anything that's going on in Firefox or Mozilla or something. You can send those into the Rate This Episode forum. Check it out. There's a forum in this agenda, and you can send me questions or comments or let me know what you thought of the stream. I love hearing everything that comes in. I'm just gonna paste the link here, link to Rate This Episode and ask questions. There you go. I read everything that comes in. I'd love to hear from you. And with that, I'm gonna call this stream done. Thanks for watching, everybody. I hope that was interesting. And I'll see you next week. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.
The joy of coding.
See ya.